Hey everyone, today I wanted to do a video about the writing revolution, specifically the new version that just came out this month, the Writing Revolution 2.0, and just kind of do my initial reactions of comparing it to the previous version, which I have shared about before. I have not read this cover to cover yet, so keep that in mind. I'm just going to show you a few of the differences that I see just kind of as I've been paging through it. It is a little bit thicker than the other one, and I will say the older version, the paper is very much like a newsprint kind of paper, and this one is a little less so. This one also uses a lot more color than the old version, which for my brain and the way that I am able to kind of read is very helpful to me. But a lot of the information from what I've looked at so far is the same, or the basics are the same, and then this one seems to add in some extra little bits of information, more examples or kind of sample assignments that you could do. Right here they have, I think, 3 pages of kind of letter to the reader, what is different about the Writing Revolution 2.0. And they talk a little bit about the emergence of artificial intelligence programs, being able to spit out an essay so quickly, and how a lot of teachers are kind of thinking, what's the point basically of teaching writing, because they can't tell whether it's been written by AI or a student. But this kind of goes on to basically say there's no shortcut to enabling students to become better writers, and that many students lack basic writing skills that would enable them to be good editors. The writing process is a learning process. If students are merely trying to revise a piece of writing that they haven't produced, they're likely to retain less information and have a shallower understanding of the material, and may even struggle to understand the text that they're revising if they're not familiar with complex sentence structure. So it says explicit writing instruction of the kind described in this book, woven into everyday classroom teaching, is the most effective way to ensure that students acquire the skills and knowledge they'll need to succeed academically and beyond, even if some will inevitably choose to rely on artificial intelligence for help in drafting a piece of writing at some point. So here it kind of outlines the changes that you might see if you're familiar with the original. So in addition to the addition of 2 outlines, the pre-transition outline and the transition outline as possible steps between the single paragraph outline and the multiple paragraph outline. So they say that it's become clear that many students who have learned to outline and write paragraphs are ready to embark on lengthier writing, but they're not yet ready for multiple paragraph, where you have to have like a really strong introductory paragraph and a conclusion paragraph, and then the paragraphs in between. And so they've incorporated these kind of new outlines that come in between, that like the transition outline just requires like their thesis statement at the beginning and a concluding statement, and then the paragraphs in between. So it's kind of like a baby step that they've added in. They've also added changes in the sequence of sentence activities. Sentence expansion is introduced earlier than in the previous edition. They have the introduction of transitions as sentence activities. Previously, transition words weren't introduced until the chapter on revision, but using transition words is an important element of revision but students benefit from using sentence activities to learn and practice the strategy. There's more illustrations of all the strategies. There's questions for book discussion groups. There's more online resources, and there's an expanded discussion of assessment. So I will tell you right off the bat, as I started reading this, the way that the pages are laid out, just even the spacing between certain paragraphs are better for me in the way that I read. A lot of the information is exactly the same though. But one thing that I noticed just on my initial flip through, let me see if I can find it. Okay, so like here when we're talking about Principle 2, which is sentences are the building blocks of all writing, I don't believe this part here was included in the original version, and I think it's important. Maybe it was included and I just don't remember it, but I found this part helpful, especially in bold here. It says, the Writing Revolution's method is meant to be recursive, with students returning to activities that have previously been introduced and not necessarily waiting for mastery of one kind of strategy before moving on to another. This means that you don't need to wait until your students have mastered all of the Writing Revolution sentence level strategies before allowing them to move on to lengthier writing. They can begin to develop simple outlines and compose single paragraphs depending on their ability level. Ideally, however, you won't ask them to write independently at length until after they have learned some basic skills. Those include distinguishing sentences from fragments, using simple conjunctions like because, but, so, and using simple subordinating conjunctions like before and when. Students should also have learned how to outline a paragraph or an essay before being asked to write one independently. So I feel, this information maybe was included in the previous version, but it wasn't included right here. So I found some things like that helpful, and I've noticed that just throughout that there's just some extra little bits kind of included, and like I said, they may have been included in the other version, just not to me in that same location to be as helpful. It still has the key points at the end, but to me, again, the way they're laid out in the newer version, just from a visual standpoint, let me see if I can find one in the old. And these are just minor things that most people, it probably would not matter to them. But I personally find it really helpful. So let me find a sum it up from the older version. Here we go. So this is a sum it up in the older version. Oh wait, is that the, oh no, here we go, sorry. So this is sum it up in the older version, and here we have it in the newer version. So it just depends if you're someone who visually needs the information presented in a certain way. That is a difference that I noticed. And let's see. Okay, so what else? There are book discussion questions here at the end. That is new. So if you were doing this as like a professional development kind of book discussion, I think those are really good things to have. So you can see this one, I think, incorporates more color. I think this is helpful. More book discussion questions. So let's compare chapter 3 to chapter 3. Okay. So there is the old version. There's the new version. So it looks pretty similar. This is the new version. These are the 2 pages of the old version. So you see how this is so much more like text heavy, I guess, and this looks much more approachable. I guess that's what I like about it so far. And I did notice in this one, I feel like there are a lot more examples. And I just like how it'll say, if you're reading Charlotte's Web, you might consider the following activity. If your class is reading Frankenstein, you might consider this activity. If your students need additional support. And just the inclusion of more color to kind of help break things up visually. Again, for some of you, that's not going to matter at all. For me, I find it really helpful. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of a flip through and a little bit of a comparison of the two. If you already have the first version and it's working fine for you, I don't think you need to buy the new version. But if you were struggling with the old version, I think that this one could definitely be worth taking a look at to see if the way that information is organized in this one resonates a little bit more with you. I requested that my library purchase this, so that's an option too. If your library is willing to do that, that could be a good way for you to get it into your own hands rather than buying it. I believe it was, I think it's $23 on Amazon right now, but you know Amazon, that changes all the time. Let's look at one of the areas that they said they added, which was, there we go, the transitional outline. So moving on to compositions, the transition outline and multiple paragraph outline. So I believe the information on the transitional outline is new here. So we have thesis statement, main idea details, and then a concluding statement before they would move on to a multiple paragraph outline. Like in the old version, there are a lot of reproducibles in the back. Some of these are the ones that I think are currently on their website that you can print out. And a lot of these are the same as are in the previous edition as well. I also believe there is, let's see, yeah, more about how to assess. So I believe this chapter is a little bit more in depth than in the previous version. I like this part about using strategies concurrently. And again, I like all the examples that are in here. All right, so hopefully that's helpful to you if you were wondering kind of what the difference is. I know these are on their website because I think I got them from there before. Kind of the sequence through the grades. This book is intended for grades 3 through 12, but they do include a sequence for grades K through 2 as well. So at any rate, hopefully that's helpful to you if you were kind of wondering what the differences are. Like I said, I have not read this cover to cover yet, but those are kind of my initial thoughts as I just begin to read through it. So if you have any questions, let me know down below.